Hello and welcome to this talk given by Quantum Global Solutions to ICAC, the International Contractors Association in Korea. My name is Dawn Francis. I'm one of the directors at Quantum. Today's talk is on the strategic approach to successfully managing your projects in the Middle East. So today we thought we would take it as a walk by the river, on a proverb of one who walks by the river may end up with wet feet. So during our walk, we'll be looking at global disruption, COVID-19 examples based on some actual examples Quantum's been working on in recent weeks. Contract administration, the all-important part of any contract. Some practical advice on contract administration and claims, and the offerings of Quantum with external support. Disaster and disruption has happened throughout history. Due to globalization, we are now all more affected and impacted than ever before, and this is no different to the construction industry. So as we walk back along our river, what potential wet feet have been experienced in the last 30 years? Each of these consequences at the time were thought to be catastrophic, with far-reaching consequences on life and work. And yet we came out the other side with lessons learned and new approaches adopted. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, leading to the first Gulf War. 2001, 9/11. Global impact of the images and the changes to our lives as a result of that were significant. And in 2003, we had the second Gulf War. 2008, we had the global financial crash starting in the States and impacting globally with significant job losses, downturn in markets, and all the resulting consequences. In 2010, the eruption of the volcano in Iceland, leading to global disruption in travel for the many months. 2010, the Arab Spring, the social and political uprisings within the Middle East, leading to regime change, refugees, and political unrest. Impact on the construction industry was significant. I was recently reminiscing with a client who has the structure of 3 hotel complexes in Tripoli. Structures are done, projects abandoned, no redress. 2011, the earthquake and tsunami at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, impacting on radiation leakage in the surrounding land and sea, the consequences of which are still being handled today. 2012, the MERS outbreak, Middle East respiratory syndrome, significant concern at the time, a fair number of deaths in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world before it was brought under control. 2014, oil prices crashed from $120 a barrel to $20 a barrel, resulting in projects being cancelled, postponed, de-scoped, job losses, and the shrinkage of economies globally. 2016, Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. Who saw that coming? I didn't. 2017, we had the blockade, the air, sea, and land embargo on Qatar by surrounding GCC states. This resulted in significant delays and disruptions to projects locally. The difficulty in bringing in materials and equipment that was previously ordered from within the surrounding states, the need to set up new supply chains and source new suppliers. 2018 saw the Ebola outbreak in Africa. Concerns over this, spread and control of the pandemic in countries such as the US, Europe, Asia, and of course the UK. And in 2020, we are now faced with COVID-19. As a result of COVID-19, not only do we have a global pandemic, but we also have a global stock market crash. The losses on the stock markets are significant. They maintain that this will be the biggest ever and could take many years to recover. We are also faced with global job losses, the immediate job losses of millions of people, followed by ongoing job losses, which again, some pundits consider will be generational. And for the first time in history, oil prices have fallen to a negative value, which has seen resulting job losses and projects being put on hold in oil-dependent economies and therefore the Middle East. We're seeing significant job losses already within the oil industry in the GCC. So back to COVID-19. It must be force majeure. However, beware. Despite the myriad of advice to the contrary, be cautious of the force majeure route. Governments and employers are seeking to avoid confirming its force majeure. And dependent on your contract and your particular conditions of contract, which I urge everyone to read carefully, the basis of force majeure is to relieve parties of their obligations or to release them entirely. And so generally, force majeure is not necessarily a vehicle for financial compensation. Force majeure, oftentimes, if accepted, will only award time. Force majeure will not necessarily compensate for losses other than time. And so what is your intent? What do you want to achieve? Time? Release from the contract? Or adequate and sufficient compensation for your time and costs incurred? So if it's not force majeure, if that's not the obvious route everybody should be taking, then what should it be? My thoughts are to broaden the thought process. Do you have additional or varied works as a result of COVID-19? Are you experiencing critical delays to the completion of the works as a result of COVID-19? Do you have increased time-related site costs, prolongation costs? Are you experiencing increased costs of executing direct works, which is disruption? So our advice is to review the situation from a different perspective. Ask yourself the question, how has COVID-19 impacted my contract? So looking in a little bit more detail, additional or varied works. Do you have extra or additional works as a result of COVID-19? Are you having to carry out works in different sequences? Are you having to adopt different methodologies to carry out your works? Any answers to those questions are potentially additional or varied works. Are you experiencing critical delays to the completion of the works? This would therefore give a rise to an extension of time. If you've got critical delays, are you experiencing increased time-related site costs, prolongation costs? As a result of these critical delays, additional time-based costs will be incurred. Increased costs of executing the direct works or disruption. Are HSE restrictions resulting in direct works being less efficient and giving rise to a disruption claim? Or any other restrictions changing and including a disruption potential? So linking the contract to COVID-19 and other disasters. For example, public authority is implementing restrictions on the amount of labour that can be mobilised on site. Your likely result is critical delay and resulting prolongation costs. So your river to follow would be an extension of time with prolongation. Public authority implements restrictions on labour gang size. Likely results is inefficient working and your direct costs increase. The works aren't being done in an efficient manner. Your river to follow is a disruption claim. You're instructed to provide additional site welfare facilities. Your likely result is additional works. Are these additional site welfare facilities over and above those envisaged at time of tender? Your river to follow is a variation to the contract. You're instructed to prioritize work areas least affected by COVID-19. For example, less labor-intensive works. Your likely result is additional works and inefficient working. Your river to follow here would be the variation to the contract and potentially disruption. Free issue equipment is delayed. The employer is not bringing the equipment to site as per your schedule. It's not arriving when it's expected. You're having to work around it. Your likely result could be critical delay and prolongation costs. So your river to follow is extension of time, prolongation, and disruption out of sequence works. Contractor equipment delayed. Likely result, contractor critical delay. So your river to follow here would be to check your contract, look at alternative suppliers within it, demonstrate mitigation measures, work around the delay, minimize the delay. So taking some examples we've been working on recently, where COVID has become apparent and part of the claim. This is a dam in Africa under the FIDIC Yellow Book. Various issues and events were identified. Number one, the delayed land acquisition. The government had failed to secure the land from the people living on the land and therefore had been unable to hand over significant portions of the site to the contractor to allow works to proceed. The contract's a yellow book. However, the employer is still working on a red book, and therefore there were design modifications being assisted by the employer. And COVID-19, the pandemic, and the governmental measures which were being enforced on the contractor on the site. So what was Quantum's approach? How did we handle this and what claims were generated? First and foremost, we concentrated on delay events 1 and 2. These events, COVID or not, were driving the overall critical delay of the project. Without the land, the contractor could not progress the works. And then we considered the disruption impact, labour and equipment, arising from the measures taken by the authorities to contain the pandemic. This results in loss of efficiency, disruption, and possible use of system dynamics, which one of my colleagues will be talking to you about. Another project we've recently been working on was a metro in Saudi Arabia. Various issues and events were identified. Late and intermittent access to the job site. The metro is going above ground, below ground, and at ground level on an existing road in a built-up area. Late receipt of IFC drawings. Late issue of free issue materials. Late instructed variations, and the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent site restrictions. So Quantum's approach to support the contractor, having identified these events, was to establish the impact of delay events 1 to 4 both before, with, and without the effect of the COVID-19. And then Quantum prepared a claim for the additional cost due to the measures taken by the main contractor, which were extremely stringent, which required a 40 square metre working area per labourer. This significantly reduced labour efficiency and has led to disruption. So everyone here is a contractor, all with experience of good, bad, and awful projects. Every project brings a learning, and COVID has and is no exception. Today, we're all concerned with how COVID will impact on completing our contractual commitments and ultimately the project margin and bottom line. Perhaps one of the most important things is timely notice of claims. Ensure you follow the contract in terms of submitting claims and claim notices. Keep them simple, one letter per notice of claim. Update regularly and include a schedule of claims in the monthly payment applications. Be sure to get this correct and if necessary, take advice. To minimize the risk of getting your feet wet is in reality back to basics. Whatever the current global or local or unique situation is, the fundamentals remain the same. Look to the cause, not the effects. We get distracted and tied up on the effects of the works. Pull it back and identify the causes. Many claims we read are full of effects, very little on cause. Variations. Give notice of variations. Make submissions. Include variation orders under review and instructions not yet agreed as variations in the monthly payment application so that there is a record, a monthly record. Good cost control. Something a contractor should be carrying out every month. What was envisaged at time of tender and what is happening. Is there a difference? Why is there a difference? The bigger the difference, the more urgency there is to drill down and find out what is happening. This may well potentially support you to identify claims you weren't necessarily aware of. Monthly report. This is perhaps the most important contemporary document within the contract. It's prepared every month by the contractor, submitted to the engineer for review, and approved by the engineer. It becomes a record. So it's also the first reference in any claim. It's where we start from. It gives us a status review. It gives us a picture of what was happening on the site at that time. Therefore, it's important to maintain it scrupulously and correctly. And for the most important thing is do not be tempted to over-report performance. Your monthly program update, again, critical to maintain. Do not over-report. While it may keep your head office and the engineer happy, it works against the contractor in the long run. For any subsequent delay and disruption claims, and thus potentially denying actual and true recovery of the cost and time incurred. Your monthly program update has been prepared, submitted, and approved by the engineer. You can't then go back and say, oh, well, it's not actually correct. We hadn't completed these works when we're stating we had. And submit notices. Oftentimes I hear contractors saying, well, we're waiting for the right time to submit this notice of claim. We don't want to upset the engineer. Delaying for the right time could have significant impacts on the validity of your resulting claim. It could make it time barred. The employer needs to accrue for potential claims, so don't hold back. Submit your notice of claims. All of the above provides a balanced view to both parties of the contract, clarity and transparency. The employer also needs to be aware of the financial exposure to include or amend their budget scope. There's no point seeking to hold everything back and ending up with an employer who physically does not have the funds to correctly and fully reimburse you. A bankrupt employer is of no use. So if the engineer keeps rejecting your notices and claims, why is this? Potentially, you could be time barred. It is important to adhere to the contract. Be very clear, check your contract on what the requirements are in submitting notices to claims. In some jurisdictions, counter-arguments are available. However, why even go there in the first place? Submit your claims on time. Maybe your claim's not presented in a coherent, clear, concise manner. Can your claim be read and understood? Can somebody who's not been involved in the day-to-day on-site situation read your claim and understand it? Communication is critical in a claim. Is it set out in an organized, logical manner? And remember, drill down on the cause. Pages and pages of the effect are meaningless without having the cause identified. And maybe your claim is not fully supported with documentation. Every statement made within a claim should be supportable and evidenced. Pages of narrative fiction do not support your claim. It needs to be factual. And get support. You as contractors are experts at building amazing projects. We as dispute avoidance and resolution consultants are experts in claims. So our closing thoughts, it's not just COVID. Quantum is committed to support Korean contractors operating internationally. COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on global construction, with significant delays and increased cost to projects due to a large variety of indirect and direct causes. Our COVID-19 task force are happy to provide a one-to-one online workshop at no cost to discuss the issues you are facing on your project. We will provide advice on how these should be managed to secure your time and cost entitlement. We are here to support you. So how to present your claims? Disruption. Invariably, this is presented as a global claim and fails. My colleague, Alex, will show you how to prepare and present a fully substantiated disruption claim with proven success. Media. Your client will not read your claim. You're lucky if they read the cover letter. You need the claim. Claim's still got to be there to support everything that is said. But how do you present it? My colleague Rob will show you how to get their attention and secure an amicable settlement. And finally, my personal thoughts after 30 years of construction in the Middle East. I would not try to build a bridge over our river without an engineer specializing in bridge design. Thank you. If any questions, feel free to contact any of us. Our contact details are on all the slides.